Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is the night of July 14th, 2014. Welcome to the council meeting. And Madam Clerk, have we met all the the noticing requirements for this meeting?
Yes, Mayor.
And will you please call the roll?
Ms. Howard?
Here.
Mr. Crummiller? Here. Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Liverman?
Here.
Ms. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Simon is absent, and Mayor Lemper.
Here. And now please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have 3 sets of minutes on the agenda tonight. The first set of minutes is from April 28th. Are there any comments or corrections on the set of minutes? Yes, Ms. Butler.
I have a correction on that. On the property that is referred to as the Zeitler property, I think it's 9 Lytle. Can we insert the address to be clear about, on page 2, the April 28th minutes? Just put the address in. 7 Lytle, thank you.
Are there any other? Yeah, Ms.
Yeah, I had a correction that I gave to Linda about the voting. I voted in favor of the budget.
Okay.
So noted.
Okay.
And a couple places, Linda, it's council, CIL, not SEL. I'll give those to you.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay.
Okay.
So noted.
Okay. Why don't we take these all as a block? So are there any corrections or changes for the May 27th meeting? There's none. And how about for June 9th?
Wendy's name, is she not Mager? Is that how you spell it? Okay, it's misspelled in the minutes.
Which page is that?
The presentation from the Friends of Open Space, I think her name is just Mager, not MEA. That's all. It's just spelling typo.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve all 3 sets of minutes with the corrections noted for April 28th?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Butler.
Second.
And seconded by Ms. Howard. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes pass unanimously. And now we come to the part in our meeting where we have comments from the public on items that are not on the agenda. We're making an exception tonight for, I know there's some people who might want to speak about a resolution that's at the very, very end of our meeting. And so if there's folks who want to talk about the anti-corruption legislation, that's fine to do. But there was a sign-up sheet here, so we're going to start with the people who signed up to speak, and then if you didn't sign up, we'll get you after the people who first signed up. So Ted Horodinsky from Elm Road in Lawrence.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to bring to your attention a condition that I've been noticing in downtown probably over a year's period or so. I gave to Councilwoman Crummiller a small packet of 5 or 6 photos, one of which was taken today in Palmer Square and the others over the last week or 2 of the way some, what I presume to be residents of apartments in downtown are disposing of their trash out on the curb, and which seems to at times remain there for maybe 5 days. Some of the photos are shocking. Beds, computer equipment, trash that has spilled over into the crosswalk on Witherspoon Street and near Spring. And it's really, it's gross. And it makes a real bad impression. And I've overheard people noticing it and saying, gee, this is embarrassing. So I know that there's trash collection schedule and that, of which I'm unfamiliar, but from the appearance of these things, it appears to be improper placement out on the curb. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And this is something that we can definitely take to the Public Works Committee to look. I know it's been a perennial problem. Daniel Harris?
Madam Mayor, Member of Council, thank you very much. I want to talk about the COA proposals. You have a deadline of August 1st for official comments, I understand. Princeton's fundamental commitment to 20% affordable housing has been our law and public policy since 1986. Our commitment is now threatened by a recent proposal from the New Jersey State Council on Affordable Housing, which states that Princeton's obligation to build any affordable housing units before 2024 is zero, zilch, none, Appendix C. This proposal is an assault on our identity and our citizens' values. It is, as Councilman Liverman has remarked, ludicrous. I urge Princeton Council to take the offensive against the COA report and boldly embrace all legal measures necessary to confirm and defend our community's historical commitment to 20% affordable housing. Council should file an open public records request for the raw data for the, quote, buildable limit capacity on which the COA report rests as soon as possible. I'm going to skip a little bit in the interest of time. No state agency should have the power to curtail Princeton's explicit desire for a diverse community. No government can maintain its credibility that does not seek to redress the needs of its citizens. Princeton's need for socioeconomic justice in our housing is greater than ever. Our town must not become an enclave for those with more than adequate financial means or crimped quarters for those without, those who struggle to manage. Princeton's 20% affordable housing ordinance is particularly important now because Princeton University has pledged to donate to the municipality 2 lots along Franklin Street adjacent to the old hospital site. COA's proposal doesn't take this donation into account. These lots are zoned for single-family, 2-family, attached dwellings, and multifamily dwellings require a 20% set-aside for affordable housing. These lots are part of what has been called the new downtown, within walking distance of Nassau Street, where 75 years ago, Edgar Palmer broached his plan for what would become Palmer Square. The Historical Society of Princeton website states, the project, delayed until 1936 due to the Depression, included the removal of many of the homes of Princeton's poor and minority families. Homes constructed here may well include a significant number of affordable units in a diverse neighborhood strategically important for Princeton's moral and legal commitments to socioeconomic justice. The municipal government, as the property's owner, must sell to a buyer committed to 20% affordable housing and should reject all non-compliant offers. The waiting list for affordable housing proves the community's need, well over 200. The need for units at the very low income level remains undisputed. We want those who work in Princeton to live in Princeton and not suffer exclusion. Council must also insist that other areas, including the Thompson Tract and the acreage adjoining the Princeton Shopping Center, produce a full 20% on-site affordable housing. We are really at a critical juncture, and I know you all feel this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think there's a lot of agreement up here, but Ms. Howard?
Yes, Mr. Harris, thank you for bringing this. And we had an interesting discussion last time, and we had a presentation about what the new proposed COA rules might mean for Princeton. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Trishka, but I'll put you on the spot, which is that we had talked about, many of us strongly support the 20% set aside and see it as not just a legal requirement, but actually a moral requirement, and we would support it regardless of the state rules. But I think we were wondering what the impact of the new proposed rules might be on Princeton, and I think that was something you were going to noodle on, and wondered if you have more thoughts for us on that point about what the impact of what the governor's proposed is for Princeton, or do we need to just make sure we're maintaining our own Princeton commitment regardless?
Well, just can I piggyback before you answer on that question, because we were above the state anyway. Now we're just above it more, correct?
Well, you mean
20% in our requirement was 20%.
No, under the old regulations, 20% was kind of the standard set aside.
I thought it was 15.
What these proposed regulations have done is cut that in half. So, now for, if you have 100 market rate units, you're only going to get 10 affordables instead of 20. And it's a problem, and certainly the way we're all reading these regulations, Princeton would be limited to a 10% set aside. It would not be able to demand.
We couldn't exceed that. We wouldn't have the ability. It limits our ability.
To exceed 20%.
That's certainly the way we're reading the proposed regulations.
Or we'd have to offer something, right? Because that's the other thing I've heard. You'd have to offer something like increased density in exchange for a higher affordable housing percentage, which is something that I think can be problematic.
I mean, I think that's definitely a question I have, and I don't know, what COA would say in terms of how much of an incentive you would have to offer, but certainly that density being dropped is going to be problematic. It's going to be problematic for a lot of people and organizations.
So that seems like something we ought to be commenting on since it's during the comment period, and is that something we're prepared to do?
Well, on that, I'm going to defer to your affordable housing consultant and affordable housing committee. I mean, there's a lot of strategy in terms of what kinds of comments you want to make and how you want to couch them, so I don't want to wade into that territory. And
right, and I wanted to turn over to Councilman Rubin.
Yeah, I mean, the new COLA rule says we can go between 10 and 20% housing, minimum 10, maximum 20. We have had a comment hearing, and we've had people come to the Affordable Housing Board and made their comments, and Daniel Harris was one of them, which we appreciate his comments. So we do have a stack of comments that we are going to be submitting, along with some of the suggestions that other people have forwarded to us. And all this will be presented, I believe, the 28th of July. We have until the 1st, but 20th of July. So we are looking into this, and I think that the majority of people that attended the hearing expressed deeply that they want to see Princeton stay at 20%. They expressed it extremely deeply. So we are submitting things that will explain to COA why we should be at 20%. There were things overlooked. So we're trying to put together a packet, and our housing specialist, Shirley Bishop, is working on that as we speak. So we do hear everyone loud and clear, and I think the majority of us up here, that we should have a 20% set aside in Princeton.
I think this is a concern that I've heard echoed in a lot of communities.
Right.
So you're not alone in taking issue with this. I think COA is going to be getting a lot of comments on this.
Okay, and this is going to be on our agenda for July 28th, because we will have the recommended response from the Affordable Housing Board, and Council will be discussing it and finalizing our response. Daniel.
Madam Mayor and Council, if I may, I think it's important to get some understanding of the actual figures before July 28th. When we were working on the Avalon Bay business a year or so ago, it was very clear from Henry Chow, who is no longer counsel for the non-existent borough, that the limit set for affordable housing was 15% by COA, not 20, and that Princeton's figure of 20% was an overage of 5%, which in Henry Chow's words would be very difficult to defend. I beg at the moment to differ with Ms. Cecil on this matter, or at least to say that clarification of what prior COA regulations were must be important to your deliberations as you go on, so that you can really understand what the stretch limits are. I am no authority on COA, as you know, but the bottom possible figure, the middle possible figure is 10%. It may go up to 20, but we do need to understand that it used to be 15 and not 20, at least in my understanding. I certainly stand to be corrected, but those are the words of Henry Chow, not me. Thank you.
Dr. Harris, I think you may be absolutely correct, but the township adopted a 20% set-aside.
That is certainly true.
And that's what Ms. Cecil is basically stating from the township. I think that the borough may have had a 15% set-aside. I'm not sure.
No, we had 20% also,
Okay,
but I had that same understanding that we were 5% over the...
Okay, so...
Can I just respond? There's a different set-aside if you're dealing with rentals under the old regulations. They had a different presumptive set-aside for rentals as opposed to for sale units, and I believe 15% was the presumptive set-aside for rentals, so that's probably where, what Henry was referring to with respect to Avalon Bay.
Right.
So, I agree with Mr. Harris. I think this is a question that has to be clarified with COA. Is 10% the floor, or is 10% 10%?
Yep, okay. All right, thank you. And I encourage everybody who's interested in this topic to come back in 2 weeks, July 28th, when we'll be finalizing our response to the state. And I believe that, and we'll get clarity on this, that individuals can also submit comments to the state. So, certainly we encourage you to do that, or if you want to give them to us, we can also append them to what our submissions are as well. But they are due on August 1st. Yes.
I think we put up it's up on our website, is it not? Is it up on our website, the form for submitting to COA? I thought I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we
good. All right, so you can also check princetonNJ.gov to submit your comments directly to the state.
Yeah, there's a link. There is a form that you need to follow, and I do believe it's on our website.
Okay. Thank you. Joe McGee? Okay, all right. So, actually, you know what, we're going to be tabling that because, I'll just give a preview. If for anybody here who's here for the shade tree ordinance, the shade tree committee asked to take a second look at it and make some more changes. So we're going to be postponing that to, the 21st or the 20, do you know when the date is?
I think the 21st.
Do we want to let people who've come to comment tonight?
Yes, of
hear the
course.
comments?
Yes,
because
of course.
We can take it under advisement.
Yes.
In that case, if it's not listed, then I will speak. I would support, I'm a member of and representative of the Stony Brook Millstone Watershed Association. We have been protecting your clean water for over 65 years, and we have a presence in this region, and we support the environmental attitude of Princeton over many years. You are definitely ahead of the curve. And having attended the Shade Tree Commission meetings, they have developed a wonderful ordinance to protect every tree over 8-inch caliper in the township. This is very forward-thinking. It is in concert with the township's ordinance, but that one only applies to site plans and subdivisions. This is similar to the boroughs, to protect every tree on every lot, and it is not onerous. It just asks for a permit. It relies on your expert arborist to make a determination. And as you know, you have an excellent staff who can make these determinations about whether the tree is dying or a problem for a house, and those decisions have been made. It is very rare that permits have not been granted in the past because of your experts, and we would urge you to adopt an ordinance that does protect all the trees in the township over a certain size. It will benefit the climate change, it will benefit the shade tree issues, it will help shade your residents, it will protect the aquifer, and I'm going to find out what the changes are at this point, and hopefully I will be back.
Okay, thank you.
it won't weaken the ordinance. There are really just a couple of things there are additions that we thought would be good things to add. One includes, for instance, marking the trees so that the community will know, the neighbors will know. A couple of things. It's not at all intended to weaken the ordinance, just things we thought we could do to help.
Thank you very much. That's very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you. And now if there's anybody else who'd like to speak on items not on the agenda who didn't sign up ahead of time, we're done with the first list.
Do you want me to talk about neighborhood representation now or during the work session?
If you could wait for the work session, that'd be better.
I just didn't know what the protocol was. Okay.
You won't have too long to wait for that.
Okay. Mayor and council members, I just would like to make a very brief statement on behalf of the anti...
Oh, and I just want to interrupt. If you could state your name and your address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Susan Colby, and 26 Herringtown Circle in Princeton. And so I want to make a brief statement just to give you some background on the anti-corruption resolution that is on the consent agenda tonight, and I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to speak a little bit. We're asking you to affirm your support for the provisions of the resolution urging the U.S. Congress and the New Jersey State Legislature to enact tough new anti-corruption laws, and in doing so, you, as an official government body, would be stating your determination to end an era where big money and unregulated super PACs exert dangerous levels of dominance over our representative democracy. This resolution is part of a national effort of Represent Us, of which I am a member and a local team co-leader for Congressional District 12, to build grassroots support for comprehensive campaign finance reform. Beginning at the local level is the first step in building this national consensus. And as local residents and citizen activists, I and my colleagues are pleased to present Princeton with the opportunity to become the first municipality in New Jersey and in the nation to adopt this resolution. And this is being done in municipalities all over the country at this time. We just happened to be the first one to get it on an agenda, so we're very proud of that. And I'll leave a copy of the these remarks and the resolution with Linda. Okay.
Thank you very much. And is there anybody else who'd like to speak as part of public comment? Okay. All right. So we'll move on now to our next item, which is a hearing on the Comcast application for renewal of their municipal franchise. And I'd like to invite up Steve Goodell, who's we have representing us on this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm Steve Goodell. I'm your special counsel for the cable issues. I have been working with the Princetons on cable issues really since the early 90s, and am back again because Comcast, who is your cable provider, is seeking a new municipal consent to renew their franchise here in Princeton. I gave you all a memo that outlines the process, but just in brief, the process for getting consent from the BPU to continue to operate a cable franchise in New Jersey is a very long one. Comcast is now embarking on that process because the municipal consent that they are currently operating under expires at the end of August of this year. Actually, it's October of this year. One of the steps in the road that they have to take is to get municipal consent from Princeton. In other words, that you, as the governing body, has to agree or consent to their continued use of the municipal right-of-way to run their cable lines and operate their cable system. Once that municipal consent is granted, they still have another step, and that is to go to the BPU to formally get a certificate of approval. So this is the first step on that road, and normally what it involves is a hearing, and that's why we're here today, is to start a hearing process, and then negotiation so that the town and Comcast can come up with a municipal consent agreement or a franchise agreement that is mutually acceptable to both parties. So some of the terms that will be discussed would be the length of that franchise, what kind of services Comcast will provide, et cetera. You've already appointed a negotiating team. That group has met once with Comcast and will meet again. So my recommendation is that you open the hearing now. I know Mr. Clifton's here from Comcast. He'll present the Comcast application. You can then ask any questions of him that you might have. You can hear from members of the public who might have things to say about the franchise, and then continue the hearing to another date to give the negotiating team some chance to sit down with Mr. Clifton and discuss the actual terms of the franchise agreement. Okay,
Okay, terrific, thank you. So, Mr. Clifton, we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the governing body. My name is Rob Clifton. I am the Senior Director of Government Affairs for Comcast Cable here in what is referred to as Central Jersey 2 system. We are nearing the end of a 3-year federally mandated process, which will actually end when the COA expires on October 13th of this year. A COA is a certificate of approval, which is a document that a cable company needs to operate a cable television system here in New Jersey. The current COA and the future one and the COAs that are governed by the Office of Cable Television before the Board of Public Utility is only for cable television. It does not oversee internet service or phone service that Comcast supplies. The Board of Public Utility will issue this COA after municipal consent and the company's application has been reviewed for compliance with state and federal law. The process began on November 13th of 2011 when Comcast filed a 626 letter, and this is Section 626 of the FCC regulations overseeing cable television, and basically Section 626 says Comcast wishes to renew its franchise here in Princeton. On January 13th of this year, we presented the governing body with a copy of our application, which was delivered to the clerk's office. Upon close of the public hearing, the town would have 30 days to issue a consent ordinance or a resolution of denial. Now, the time frame on this is very flexible. As long as both the municipality and the company are talking, negotiating, this time frame is extended. It's not even a formal extension. The only time that the Board of Public Utilities would sort of impose this time frame is if neither party could get in touch with the other. If I reached out, never heard back, or you reached out to me, never heard back, that's when the Board of Public Utilities would step in with their time frame. It's a very informal process as long as both entities are continuing to discuss. The consent ordinance which we are seeking is a simple right-of-way. It is not a contract which will obligate the municipality to do anything other than to allow us to continue to run our plant, our fiber optic cable, our equipment on your rights of way. It is non-exclusive, which means that any other cable provider could come to Princeton and offer service to your residents. And currently we have a direct competitor in Verizon in the municipality, which can now service over 60% of the municipality. So there is direct competition here in Princeton. About 6 years ago, the franchising model was changed significantly. There's two now processes for franchise renewal. The first one is the one that we've undertaken, the 3-year federally mandated process where we provide an application, we have a public hearing, we directly negotiate. The other way is a statewide franchise which would allow any cable provider to go to the Board of Public Utilities and seek a franchise to operate here in Princeton without going through direct negotiations with the municipalities. That is the model that Verizon chose to do. Comcast and its 399 municipalities, we have yet to use that model. Each municipality, we believe, is unique in how it deals with cable. Some municipalities have no access channels, aren't looking to do anything with an access channel. Here, for instance, and in East Brunswick and South Brunswick, there's a robust local access component to your cable system. The only time that Comcast would move towards a statewide franchise is if negotiations have completely broken down. And like I said, we've already started talking, and we've had good conversations. I've spoken with Mr. Miller several times and members of the committee several times. If the governing body has 4 criteria in which they must follow in order to accept or deny our application. And these are not Comcast, these are state and federal regulations. 1, has the cable operator substantially complied with the existing terms of the current franchise? Does the quality of the operator's service been reasonable? Does the operator have the financial, legal, and technical ability to provide the services that it offers? And in the renewal process, is it reasonable in light of the community's cable-related needs? There are 2 areas, however, that you cannot use in whether to approve or to deny our application. 1 are rates. These are governed by the state and the federal government. And second is our channel lineup, our programming. It is protected like newspaper content is under the First Amendment. That being said, I look forward to any questions or comments from the governing body or from the public. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, why don't we start if there's any questions from members of council, and if not, we'll open up the public hearing. Are there any questions to start?
Rob, it might be helpful if you or perhaps Steve Goodell took a moment to explain the parameters that are negotiable. You've identified a couple that aren't negotiable, but could you
basically
about what is negotiable?
We can negotiate for the town can ask for grant money, free services in certain areas. Again, rates are not. A lot of towns ask for senior citizen rates. Those are discriminatory pricing, so we are not able to give senior citizen discounts. So it's really what the municipality is looking for in terms of technology grants or free services. And on our side, we're looking for the longest possible term that the municipality is willing to give us. The longest term is a 25-year, which is a 15 with an automatic 10-year. And the only way we get the automatic 10-year is after the municipality the municipality reviews the last 15 years, make sure that we've complied, the system functions properly, and then they would either agree or disagree and then petition the Board of Public Utilities not to grant that extension. The current length of term, on average, if you lumped in all the municipalities, the 399 that we have in New Jersey, is about 23 years. The theory was early in cable's existence was shorter was better. A mom and pop would come in, build a cable system, sell as much as they could, and then walk away. The system would degrade. The issue now is with us providing lifeline services such as phone and home security, we cannot allow our system to fall off the slightest amount. We are now the nation's #1 internet provider and #4 phone provider. So the fear that a longer term would allow us to sell a lot and then walk away and allow the system to fall apart doesn't hold true anymore, especially in a town like Princeton, where now we have Verizon directly competing for the same services we sell to all of your residents. So just to summarize, on the town side, you're asking for grants, free services. On our side, we're looking to get the longest term we can because of the capital investment we make into the municipality.
Thank you.
Let me just supplement what Mr. Clifton said. He's absolutely right in terms of the way negotiations usually go. What I can tell you is that, without talking about what we may do in the future, in the past, here are some of the things that we negotiated with Comcast or its predecessors. One was the franchise term. That's always been an issue. It may be a little less of an issue now for the municipality because there are fewer players in the game. Comcast is a much bigger cable company than we have had in the past. But in general, the town's desire was to keep the franchise term shorter in order to maintain more control over the provider. Their goal was to make it longer because the longer it is, the more investment they can put into it. Another thing that has always come up in the past, although I don't know whether it's going to be an issue right now, is the quality of the of the production, quality of the signal that you're getting, so that rebuilding the system to bring it up to modern standards was always an issue in the past. We'll have to look at that. I'm sure Comcast provides a very good signal now, but that's the kind of thing that in the past was on the table. The PEG channels, public educational and governmental channels, how many, how are they going to be designated? Princeton has a very active PEG community. We have a lot of channels. They're made very good use of. We also have a public access channel, which is very active, more so than almost anywhere in the state. Issues about special events programming in the past, cable companies have done that. I'm not sure that they're still in the business of doing that, but that's the kind of thing that in the past we would talk a lot about. And then in the past, as you know, we negotiated some subscriber fees and some programming fees, which were very beneficial to the town, which have helped a lot.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like to open the public hearing up now. Can I just get a show of hands of people who are here to speak at the public hearing? Okay, terrific. So when you come up, if you can just state your name and address or affiliation, whoever wants to start.
Peter Thompson, 50 Horner Lane, and also I'm the manager of information technology for the Princeton Public Schools. And a couple things representing the schools that we would like to keep our educational access channel, although technology keeps changing, but we aren't quite to the point where everyone's getting their information over their smartphones and so forth, so that's important to us. We would also like to, speaking of technology upgrades, upgrade our technology in the schools so we have at least 3 high-definition set-top boxes available in each school, since we now have the equipment to be able to make use of that, and it's, everyone's used to high definition as the base standard, and if we're talking a 15 to 25 year term, I think we need to get that in there. But most importantly, the municipality has benefited since the 1980s, when HomeLink Communications was our original cable company, in having a forward-thinking cable provider that offered high-speed internet services. Even back in the 1980s, we had internet services that until 10, 15 years ago weren't around in most systems. And one of the pieces of that has been the institutional network, which interconnects all of our municipal locations, including the schools, municipal buildings, fire, police, rescue locations, senior centers, so forth. And that's been very beneficial to us over the years and allowed us to implement technology access in all those locations very cost effectively. And I want to make sure that we're able to continue the high quality support and maintenance of that has been offered through HomeLink and CTEC, Patriot Media, Comcast, I'm missing one, RCN Cable. And over the years, they've all worked with us to upgrade those institutional network connections between our sites. So I think it's very important that we keep that in one form or another in the franchise agreement, so we can keep that all working, since it benefits all of the community. Oh, I forgot, the public library is also tied in there. And I'm not talking internet service, I'm saying it's a institutional network, which is a point-to-point network between those sites. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question? Peter, are you part of the negotiating team?
Yes.
I'm the chair of the negotiating team. That's the third half.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Yes, come on up, Donna.
My name is Donna Liu. I'm at 40 Southern Way. I'm the chair of the cable committee as well. And I had one point to make about the quality of the signal, and I do think that we have to consider HD, upgrade to HD channel as part and parcel of keeping up with the medium quality of television delivery. So I think that HD should be an important consideration in the next agreement. And then I did have a question for Mr. Clifton, which was what happens if Comcast and Time Warner merge? How does that affect agreements and public interest obligations?
The merger with Time Warner would have no impact. Just like when we purchased Patriot Media, we upheld the franchises that were in place, such as here in Princeton, and we would do that as well with Time Warner. Actually, some of the things that have already been talked about is one of the programs that we rolled out about 3 years ago was called Internet Essentials, and Internet Essentials was, or is, a internet program for school-age children who meet the requirements under the federal free and reduced school lunches. They would receive high-speed internet for $9.95 a month, and as long as they stayed in that program, that cost would never go up. So if they qualified as a first grader and stayed in that program all the way through high school, they would have high-speed internet, that entire educational experience, at $9.95 without it ever going up. And there's already been discussions of rolling that out in the Time Warner footprint as well. Once the acquisition, if it's approved, that's just one of the programs, and our community affairs people are already looking at the things that Time Warner does to see if they would be applicable to roll them out here in other Comcast systems. So under federal law, whatever's in the current agreements for Time Warner, we would maintain those. When we acquire a system like we did here, we acquire everything that comes with it. And in Princeton's case, 6 access channels we acquired, the iNet, things like that. So whatever Time Warner has in their, because I believe there's only 6 or 7 towns in New Jersey that are Time Warner, we would acquire those franchises and maintain those agreements as we have done here.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, George?
Hi, my name is George McCall. I'm the Executive Director of Princeton Community TV, the public access channel. And I just wanted to say I think it's really, really important that we maintain the funding that Princeton TV receives and Comcast's commitment to those fundings. I know there was some issues regarding some of the grant money that's going to be in the next franchise agreement, and I would, at a very minimum, maintain what was done before. And also, in the last, like the last couple of months, I've been hearing from different subscribers of Comcast that our audio is sometimes good and sometimes bad and stuff like that. And I know it could be me or running the TV station, because not all the programs we get have the best audio and everything like that. But it's hard for me to monitor the station, because when you guys hooked us up when we moved to the new building, the little cable box we had needs to be turned on, and I was wondering if there's some kind of way to get that turned on so I can monitor, so at least monitor the feed.
We'll talk offline and I'll see what I can do. I'll have someone from the tech department get in touch with you.
Okay, great. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, come on up.
Ted Horodinsky, Lawrence Township. I had not intended to comment on this, but as I'm listening, things come to mind. I am a computer services company in Mercer County, primarily in Princeton, and I've been in business for 13 years. And Comcast, being a cable provider, has always had a leg up on Verizon. 40 years ago or so, or 50 years, maybe 35 years ago, coax came into our lives and replaced the antennas on the TV. Verizon has been playing catch up until they could get their fiber optic cable installed. Prior to the installation of the fiber optic cable, Verizon was trying to stay in the game with DSL, which is sort of somewhat fast dial-up. And in that time period, I'm sorry to say to you, sir, that Comcast's service has been very poor. So I would keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment? Okay, instead of closing the public hearing, we're going to have a second public hearing, and we will schedule it. I don't want to firm it up right this second because we have to just check on dates, but my guess would be at the August 25th meeting, we'll have a second round of public hearing. So if there's anybody watching from home who'd like to comment, you check the website for our agenda for August 25th, and we'll put that down as a tentative date. So thank you very much. All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a presentation from Princeton University, Kristen Applegate, on the Arts and Transit project and where you are with construction.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for just a few minutes for a brief update. I'm here this evening to give you actually an update after something happened because of your schedule. I wasn't able to get here before University Place reopened last Wednesday. You'll notice that the road is open, but there continues to be some work on the I guess it's the east side of the road, the non-McCarter side of the road, doing landscape and other sidewalk improvements. That work will continue through the middle of August, at which time all of the barricades and different things that are up and around in that area will come down. We continue to urge people, do not use the crosswalk that's near the Berlin Theater, because you cross into fences on the other side. It's all blocked off, but I still see people kind of climbing over things to cross. Don't climb over things to cross the crosswalk. Go up to the corners and use the crosswalks. Wanted to let you know that essentially the next major project milestone for the Arts and Transit project will be the reopening of the Princeton station at its permanent location, which will be at the same time that the new Wawa will open and the Lot 7 access road will open, and that will happen sometime in late fall in coordination with New Jersey Transit, who will need to move the train from the temporary station to the permanent station. I will obviously be back in front of you before that takes place so that we can get information out to the public so that they know when that is taking place. And I'll be able to give you more detail at that time. But wanted to let you know that for all intents and purposes, the major infrastructure, the roadway improvements, et cetera, that have impacted the public are essentially complete and will be fully complete this fall when the station reopens. At that time, the construction site becomes a construction site for the cafe, the restaurant, and the actual Lewis Center for the Arts. As we had always said, the enabling work, the public structures go in first before the buildings do. And then I wanted to also give you a quick update, actually not related to the Arts and Transit project, but one that I know is of interest to many people, which is the Faculty Road grade crossing improvements that are going on right now. Of course, the road closed at about 5 a.m. on Friday because essentially New Jersey Transit is taking out the grade crossing and putting in a new one. You'll notice that work has already been done to replace the traffic lights at Faculty and Alexander, and all the rail crossing infrastructure is being replaced. Sidewalks actually will be added on the south side of Faculty Road as well. So there'll be sidewalks on both sides of Faculty Road in that area, which is a good pedestrian and bike improvement. As of this afternoon, before all these dark clouds started to roll in, everything was on schedule. Overnight tonight, there are plans to be out there paving. The asphalt plant was planning to be open all night, so as long as we don't get, thunder and lightning that makes it dangerous for people to be out there doing the work, they're going to continue to work through the night, and we're still on track to reopen on Wednesday. So we appreciate everyone's patience as we get through this very it's a tough phase.
Thanks. Ms. Butler?
Yes, as long as you brought up the grade crossing, can we talk a little bit, and maybe Deanna, you'd want to work your way to the microphone to talk about what the changes in the timing will be that might impact the traffic on Alexander, the change?
Actually, it's about 3 seconds.
That's what it'll come out to be? I thought it was, I thought
There was some
that said 30.
misinformation that was discussed at the Traffic and Transportation for a few months ago. It was just incorrect information.
Oh, well, that's good. So what it means, though, is that when the dinky is on the tracks,
it's red.
DOT has said that there can be no cars between the train tracks and Alexander Road on Faculty, if you can picture that. That chute needs to be empty for safety purposes, so no one, I guess, no cars would inadvertently be stuck on the track. So it will mean a 3-second longer, I had thought it was going to be 30 seconds, which would have been enormous.
Yeah, there was misinformation early on in the process, misunderstanding between folks who were talking in technical jargon that weren't necessarily communicating with the lay people in the appropriate way.
Well, that's really, but it does mean that the light on Faculty will need to be open longer to get people out and a few seconds longer.
And some people already noticed that there's a new sign that says no turn on red. A lot of people may have noticed that when you're coming north, you're coming into Princeton, there's a sign there that said no turn on red. What was happening is they haven't fully implemented all phases of the traffic light, so there's actually a traffic light there with a green turn right arrow. So people were looking at this saying, what do you mean I can't turn on red? I've always been able to turn right on red here. There's a green arrow that will be enabled, is the only way I can think of it, once the grade improvements are done, because the grade improvements are all tied into the new electrical that's in that new traffic light. It's a completely modern system that's been installed there. It's for the safety of everyone going through. And as you mentioned, Councilwoman Butler, the change in the timing of green on Alexander Road is about 3 seconds.
Oh, I am so happy about that. That has been on my mind for days, weeks, months.
I was happy about it too.
Oh, good.
Are there any other comments or questions? No. Okay,
So thank you. Thank you. And I'll be back in the fall.
Okay. Okay, and now we turn to our work session this evening, which is on advisory planning districts. And this is something that, a concept that was first put forward by the Consolidation Commission in their report, and it was to help address the concern the Consolidation Commission was hearing from some residents about a potential loss of voice, especially in the planning process. So the idea was proposed to have advisory planning districts to give neighborhoods a more formal role in the planning process. It was left to the Transition Task Force to take that idea and realize it. There were a lot of challenges with putting it together, so the Transition Task Force then punted it to the new governing body. And there's been a task force that's been working on it pretty heavily this year, but I'm going to turn it over to Councilwoman Jenny Krumiller to give us a report on what the task force has come up with.
Right. I hope not to read the report. But in a nutshell, we struggled with how to implement advisory planning districts, and we decided to address the concerns about neighborhood representation through a neighborhood planning program. We wanted to have a public meeting in the spring to discuss residents' ideas, but we had scheduling problems, and so we're having this meeting right now, and we're also having a meeting in September, September 17th in the community room, because we're still this is still evolving, and this is really a status report. We're looking forward to hearing the residents tonight. And so I want to assure residents that we still haven't completely finished our work. The highlights of the neighborhood planning program are, I would say, we hope to use the zoning harmonization process as a mechanism and structure for involving neighborhoods and involving people in the planning for their neighborhoods. We hope to publicize these meetings a little better than they usually are publicized and to hold some of them at night. We also hope to develop a list of neighborhood groups on the municipal website and links for contact information, really to emphasize that we support neighborhood groups. We want to help them organize themselves as well as help us communicate with neighborhoods and develop, good communication channels with neighborhood groups. Other suggestions are aimed at improving communication and involving residents early in the development process. We have a list of, of suggestions, but I'd rather not go through them unless you think that's a good use. I mean, would you like to go through them, or?
Do you want to list some highlights?
We want to require land use application materials to be submitted in an electronic format. It seems a fairly simple suggestion. That makes them easier to share. We want to develop a notification system and a mechanism to distribute materials digitally to residents more widely than the minimum required. Right now, when there's a development application, there's a requirement for residents within 200 feet, and we think, if possible, we would like to maybe widen that circle. Let's see. Some of the other, I think I've gone through. We would like to have all the planning board subcommittees produce just summary minutes of their meetings, which isn't done for all of them right now. And we want all planning board and zoning board meetings to be televised. Wanda, did I miss? Is there anything? Wanda Gunning is here, and she's the planning board representative on our committee, and she's also the planning board chair. I don't know if you. Yeah, so she just said that she's looking forward to hearing what neighborhood representatives. So am I. I mean, we really. I want to stress that we struggled with neighborhood districts because it sounded like a good idea, but when it came down to the details, we struggled with things like boundaries, how we would, who would decide what a neighborhood is and where the boundary is. That was a big, and the representation, who would represent the neighborhoods, and how would we ensure, would we have to, oversee a whole election apparatus for representing neighborhoods? But the main stumbling block was we felt that when neighbors were divided, the neighborhood advisory groups would actually be might actually be counterproductive. They would work well when there's a consensus, but when there's not, who then in the group is the representative, and what, we felt that was a big stumbling block.
Okay, well, I want to thank Councilwoman Crummiller for engaging in this work. I know it's been a challenging assignment, and I also wanted to recognize some members of the task force here tonight. Wanda Gunning and Ryan Lilienthal is here, and
Patrick Simon is not here, but he's been working hard too.
And also Bill Harla and Valerie Haynes have also been active on the task force. So I wanted to thank you all for, I don't want to make it past tense, but thank you for your work so far and for your continuing work on this. And I'd like to, I don't know if there's any questions from council first. Yeah, Ms. Butler.
Jenny, the recommendation that the planning and zoning board meetings be televised, I mean, actually, that's something you've been talking about for a long time. What are the hurdles to accomplishing that?
I've been trying to get it to happen, and I haven't been able to, so I think I keep hearing different reasons for this. I think the cable committee is thinking about doing it for us, or?
Kathy, feel free to jump in. What's the...
Well, without revealing too much of anything, but because we've been having some discussions with TV30 regarding their proposal, and one of the things that we've been talking about is increased taping or televising of meetings, and that may include the planning and zoning board. So it's still in discussions, but it's very much, in the forefront of our talking.
It does take staff time, and that's the problem. Right now, we don't have staff available.
Are there any other comments or questions from council right now? Okay, so I'd like to open it up if there's, Mr. Harris?
Thank you again. I want to commend all the task force for their time and genuine thoughtfulness in generating a superior set of recommendations. Ms. Krummeller, Ms. Gunning in particular, you are here. Ryan Lilienthal, I think that is you, but we haven't met. I'm sorry, I mistook the face. Thank you. I'm delighted to see that the use of, and Ms. Krummeller has really hit the central issue, and I'm going to come to that. The last paragraph rightly refers to additional staff time and money that will be required of the planning office, among others, to implement the recommendations. I would like to comment briefly on this observation made by the task force. With all due respect to Lee Solo, Eileen Cotroneo, and Carrie Phillips, I have usually found the planning office to be tremendously overworked, often rushed, and often unable to get to citizen requests until later. I make this observation as a person who has been involved in 3 citizen movements since 2007. The campaign to save Princeton Ridge, the movement to preserve the northwest corner of Bunn Drive from environmentally unsustainable development by the Westerly Road Church, now Stonehill Church, and the effort by Princeton citizens for sustainable neighborhoods to achieve a satisfactory design for the site of the old Princeton Hospital. I've had a lot of contact with the planning office, most of it very positive, but sometimes hampered by the unavailability of staff to provide documents and/or plans. I would urge Princeton Council to consider the employment of additional staff. That's a really rough one, but in the whole business of electronifying the universe for all of Princeton citizens to have access, it is essential. It is worth noting here that the planning office itself is sometimes hobbled by developers who do not submit their plans in a timely manner and thus cause chaos among planning office staff, or do not correctly paginate their site plan pages, plats I believe they are called, and in thus failing to provide accurate paperwork according to municipal land use law, again cause consternation among planning office staff. I frankly do not know if any New Jersey municipal planning office has any leverage to insist that all developers submit their materials in proper format and in a timely manner, or whether municipal land use law clock can be turned back or reset in cases of difficulties introduced by developers. But the issue is well worth exploring, and I truly hope that appropriate people will appoint other appropriate people to look into this matter. I would expect, Ms. Cecil, that you would wish to have a professional input and that your expertise would be valued. I note that you serve as counsel to a number of municipalities, and I cannot believe that Princeton is the only one that is occasionally subject to the inappropriate submission of paperwork by developers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alexi Asmus, Maple Street, and I'd like to address neighborhood representation in the municipality. I believe it is important to have permanent organizations to represent neighborhood interests, and that long-term organizations such as the Jackson Witherspoon Association may be able to interact in a constructive way with the municipality to ensure that neighborhood concerns such as new development or redevelopment, traffic, parks, and lightings are heard and acted upon. I'd like to tell you about some informal research I did, talked to some people in Charlottesville, Virginia, a college town that has very strong neighborhood associations. They're self-empowered. They're not set up or established by the municipality, and that work very constructively with the municipality. I have spoken with the president and also the former secretary of Charlottesville's 20-year-old Martha Jefferson Neighborhood Association. I'll just give you some examples from minutes in one of their monthly board meetings so you can have a sense of the kind of work that the association does and how it interacts with the municipality. Quote, Bruce reported on a discussion among city councilors and his follow-up with city manager Maurice Jones about MJNA concerns regarding traffic arising from the new developments. Bruce will follow up with Maurice Jones on a traffic study of the impact on key area streets of the developments. Quote, Harry will find a responsible party to talk with about changing the streetlights to downcasting LEDs. Quote, Bruce will contact the UVA School of Architecture to see if there is any interest in conducting a design charrette for the area south of East High Street across from the former MJ Hospital. Quote, we viewed the map Chris Gensick from the City Parks Department sent showing candidate Pocket Park location and discussed the possibility of a park across High Street near the Wells Fargo Bank. So that's the kind of work they do and how they interact with the municipality. I'll have to say I've spoken with members of the group and say that when developers come to town, they recognize these neighborhood associations as players in the process, and that when developer will go to municipal staff, the municipal staff will direct them first to the neighborhood associations. As I mentioned, the neighborhood associations in Charlottesville are self-empowering, so it's nothing that the municipality has to do. They have their own bylaws, and they all include neighborhood boundaries within which anyone over 18 can be a member, and they're recognized by the IRS as nonprofits. So this is a fairly established form of organization across the country. They are grassroots, but in Charlottesville's case, they're highly structured, and they've been highly successful. Officers are elected yearly, and most of them, there are minimal dues, and their strength in Charlottesville has come from their ability to represent the neighborhood's long-term, with officers that meet with municipal officials on a monthly basis and block captains that cover the neighborhoods block by block. These are not political organizations. The municipality has responded to these neighborhood-grown organizations by running a leadership institute to train neighborhood association officers, and one can see from the Charlottesville municipal website what an important role these associations play, with multiple pages on the municipality website devoted to the 17 different neighborhood associations in this 40,000-person municipality. So it's a little bit bigger than Princeton, but not that much. The municipality has set up a program to interact with the associations and to foster interactions among them and to give you a sense of the mission and how the municipality views them. I'll quote from the municipality's website. Quote, Neighborhood Connection is a citizen-focused alliance network that helps provide Charlottesville residents with the resources they need to promote, preserve, and ensure the character of their communities. It is intended to increase communication among and between neighborhoods and city government. And I'm not asking you to do something because, as I mentioned, these are organizations that can set themselves up. But it's something that I and others are thinking about, and I think the concept of them being long-term is important and being structured is important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, well,
Ms. Butler?
Yes, this is interesting. But tell me, are they 501c3s?
Yes, I believe so. They file a form called 990N.
Oh, yeah, they have a 990 then, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And this question of, are they representative and what are elections? I mean, my sense is they prove themselves. I mean, it's required that anybody within the neighborhood boundaries as defined by the association, it's not really the municipality's problem, can join. And I asked the president whether there's ever been a problem with splits among the neighborhood or what happens there. He said only one time he saw that, and what happened was the municipal engineer was working with several people from the neighborhood, and then when the neighborhood association got together, she realized she was working with just a very small number of people, and it wasn't representative of the whole group. But it was resolved at a neighborhood association meeting. And so I think it may be, I myself don't know how much of my time I will devote to this. I may do, work on this, but I think at least in Charlottesville's case, it's been very helpful. There have not been a lot of lawsuits, and it's been grassroots consensus that has emerged through these self-empowered neighborhood associations that work very closely with the municipality.
Do you happen to know what the dues are?
They're very minimal. I think they're $5 to $10 every 2 years. For the one I spoke with.
That does sound like a very low rate, but at the same time, you can understand that there might be neighborhoods where people might feel, I shouldn't have to pay to be represented.
I don't think there have to be dues. I think it's more of a practical matter for the one I spoke
I'm sure they
with.
have expenses to cover as well, but you can imagine that residents might feel that way.
Yeah, I just want to say, you shared this information with me, and I was very impressed with their program, and I looked at it, and it was the basis for the recommendation for, I think a step toward something like this is starting a list on our website. I looked at their website, and actually the municipality does not do that much to facilitate these. They just, the groups are incredibly organized, and I was looking at some of the minutes, and they meet on a regular basis, and they take minutes, and they maintain a website. So it's some really organized, active citizens, and I think that's great. And I support this idea of yours. I think it's a good one, and it takes care, having the neighbors organize themselves rather than have a structure imposed on them just makes it a whole different ballgame from having, say, government-sanctioned advisory districts, because it's voluntary. They're all voluntary. So I think it's I'm glad you share this information, and I think it's a really good idea.
Mr. Miller?
I'd like to thank you for the research that you've done, and I would like to point out that in addition to the one very active neighborhood association that you mentioned, there are at least 2 other neighborhood associations in Princeton that have been active from time to time and have kind of waxed and waned around particular issues. But it would be interesting to see if those other 2 organizations still have a formal structure and could be brought back to the same level of organization and interest as the one that you mentioned.
What are the names of those? Are those the ones?
Well, I'm not sure I've got them all correct,
okay.
but
because I was looking today, because I thought there were others as well. I was looking, but I couldn't find them on the web.
There was at one point a Northeast Residents Association that had a great interest in the development of Smoyer Park and the area around Smoyer Park. There at one time was, or still may be, a Riverside Residents Association that was formed around a question of potential development of the TRI site. And both of those still may exist in one form or another. And it would be interesting to see if they could be activated on more of a continuing basis than just in connection with a specific neighborhood issue.
Well, my thought was that instead of responding to crises and emerging and this enormous amount of work that citizens put in, if there's a long-term permanent organization that's keeping up with things as they go along, everybody can be a little calmer about it. That was my sense from when I talked to people in Charlottesville about it. But
Mr. Lieberman?
Yeah. Alexi, thank you. Thank you so much. I guess my concern is always the little guy or the person that may not belong to an association or may not be able to pay a fee or may not know what's going on, may not have internet. I love associations. I think they're great. But I think that if we did anything And I'm glad you're saying it's not the municipality, but whatever we do, we should be mindful and include everyone. And that would be my only concern, is that and also the transparency, that we're transparent with a lot of this information, because what you read here with Bruce and Harry going directly to people and other people not knowing, I think it's fine, I think it's great, but I think we just want to be transparent. I would hate to see any favoritism for Bruce and Harry with the administrator, with whoever, the mayor, we just have to be very, very careful when we think, when we have associations where we think that Bruce and Harry represents, 200 people, and they could be representing themselves. How do we know? I'm just saying we have to be very, very careful. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I think people have to try to evaluate that some way or another. Of course, municipal governments represent people better or worse too, so,
Well, I agree, but I think it's great to have the community respond, and you do a good job.
Yeah, it is very transparent, though. That's why I could read you the minutes. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Royce?
I'm Barry Royce. I'm chair of the zoning board and also a member of something which I think you should mention in this context, namely Princeton Future, which has been a group of citizens who get together and discuss how they feel Princeton should develop. I believe the fact that we have a park outside the public library rather than surface parking was one of the efforts that Princeton Future took care of. In addition to that, it seems to me that the awareness of the need for public footpaths winding through Princeton so that people can get to school without having to walk on the main roads and so on is another suggestion that, from my viewpoint at any rate, had an initiation in that group. As chair of the zoning board, I have a different view about the zones that people are interested in, and it seems to me very important that when public hearings are held, such as a zoning hearing, people are given an opportunity to present their objections or support to the particular board that is hearing a case. And I must say, from a strictly zoning viewpoint, the board is very lenient in listening to what people have to say, because in a way that feeling that you're participating in whatever the final decision is very important for the public. And feedback I get about that indulgence, if I can be forgiven for calling it that, is that it is very positive in how people feel about whatever decision gets made. So I would urge you to do that in all public meetings. As to appearing on television, it's wonderful, but if it's as bad as the television of the council that I looked at on 3 or 4 separate occasions, the resolution is bad, the sound is bad, and you can't read any of the documents, it's a waste of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't see that Ryan Lilienthal was here before. Is there anything that we missed that you want to add?
Ryan Lilienthal, 34 Maple Street. I think these comments are really helpful. As you pointed out, Jenny, it's an ongoing process. One of the themes, and I think people have touched on it, that we wanted to address, it was beyond what was provided for in the consolidation statute, which itself looks for something, a mechanism to respond to applicants, is to develop a proactive plan so the municipality will proactively engage residents in the development process and preservation process, zoning, and so on. I think that what Alexi's pointed and what Barry's pointed out to are all issues that we've been really thinking about. It's helpful to have that input.
Thank you. Ms. Butler?
When you go back to work and think about this a little bit, one thing Lance and I were discussing, we had, since we last met, Lance and I met with some neighbors up at Laurel Circle about the condition of their cul-de-sac, and that had been done, some work had been done there in agreement with the neighbors, and they were going to do some upkeep. And, the neighborhood changed, a few people move in, a few people move out, and we have a similar situation in Harrison Street Park, where we had a neighborhood group that lobbied heavily for certain plantings in the park, and then over time, for various reasons, sort of haven't been able to keep that up. And so one thing I have concern about, and that's why I wanted to know whether they were a 501c3, was that there would be some sort of accountability and some officers, if you will, that when people come and lobby us for certain things, and everyone wants to have public-private partnerships, it all sounds like a great idea, but, you know, when everybody's not keeping up their end of the bargain, there isn't often recourse. And so, or elected, you know, it's hard to understand who's representing the group or who we might go to start a dialogue. So
these structured groups would help with that situation.
Right. A structured group would help.
I mean, I think we should discuss how, how we can help, if we think that's a good idea, to really foster these groups, how we can, you know, give them the help that someone, I mean, I'd like to know how they actually started in Charlottesville, because...
And, you know, now we have situations where we know that there are people in the community who have pretty extensive email lists for their community, but you don't really know to whom they're emailing. It seems as if they sometimes are representing large groups, but we don't really know for sure.
Right. I mean, what we do want to take the step of really trying to compile a list of people who have email lists. Right now, that's what I think a lot of neighborhood groups, that's their main, you know, tool for organizing.
Yeah, well, I would recommend that this is something that the task force can look at some more, about, you know, if there's a model to look at Charlottesville and what the town has done to help the groups establish themselves, or even just providing resources for the groups that exist. That's a good idea. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Yes, Mr.
Paul Driscoll, Harris Road. I was interested in what Lance had to say about the Witherspoon-Jackson Street neighborhood, and I think I've been to almost all of those meetings, and I think it's very productive, that particular meeting, because you were saying that there aren't any real dues at that particular neighborhood. You go and maybe you make a donation to defray costs, and so anybody can attend, and I've tried to attend every one recently, and I think they bring up everything from proper signage on the street to big zoning projects. And it would be a good idea. I know a lot of you people on council, all of you just about have attended at least one or more of those meetings, but I think it would be a great idea if the planning board could attend a meeting like that. That concerns everything that's happening along the Witherspoon Street corridor and beyond. The issues of affordable housing are very important in that neighborhood, and they've been covered. And I think, I'm going back to what Alexi had said earlier, I think if the planning board attended those meetings, it would give us the impression that they're more aware of what the neighbors' concerns are. The impression that we have when we go to the meetings like this, and you have to get all your thoughts put into 3 minutes, and you have to wait your turn. Sometimes it feels like the momentum of the developer has gotten so strong that it's being rubber stamped. That may not be the case. It may not be rubber stamped, but sometimes I think it appears that way to the neighbors, which is why people sometimes panic. I can use myself as an example. You've seen it. So I think that Witherspoon-Jackson Street neighborhood, which I guess Jim Floyd got started, is an example of a very good format for people to attend and to make people feel included, because when I do see people on council there, it makes me feel that they're interested. And if I saw people at the planning board that were there, it would make me feel that I'm not saying that they aren't aware of what's going on, but that the neighbors are a part of the process, that they are not controlled by the developer. The impression that I have talking with many people is that the developers whoever that may be, and there are a few of them, have so much power that they can come in with their lawyers and intimidate the planning board into doing what they want. So that some of this may be a perception thing. And I think if people were actually attending, if each neighborhood had a meeting like this, instead you attend the neighborhood meeting, that it might actually have a very strong positive influence on making the people in town feel more included. And one more comment. I think a few meetings ago, Bernie Miller said that the developer doesn't have to share his plan with the public before he submits it to the planning board, that's not an obligation. So therefore, sometimes the public finds out about something after the fact and then tries to do something about it. Is there a way of giving the public 30 days notice before the planning board hearing even starts? In other words, you tell the developer there's a 30-day hiatus. We have to notify the public first. Maybe this is already happening. I don't know. Where there's actually a definite amount. If it happens over the summer, for example, a lot of people are in Vermont, or wherever in vacations, they can't make it. Maybe these planning board hearings shouldn't even take place during the summer months. Maybe it should be taking place in September, and maybe we should hearing about these now so that we can put them on our calendar. Just some thoughts.
Ms. Krumler?
Yeah, well, it's my understanding that the developer lobby in the state is really powerful, and that Trish, am I wrong? I don't know how much control we have over requiring a longer, could we say require a longer period?
So the MLUL is what sets the noticing requirements, including how far in advance a developer has to provide notice of an application. And there's actually cases out there that say that municipalities can't deviate by requiring a developer to provide, either notice to, a greater swath of people or further in advance of a meeting than what's set in the MLUL. I don't think that necessarily prevents a municipality from doing it, but you can't require the developer. I think what Mr. Driscoll is suggesting may also be have as much as anything to do with scheduling, like, having the board, so the application is submitted, but having a longer lead time between when the application is submitted and then when it's placed on a board agenda. And I think certainly that's something, boards have submission deadlines, they can play with that, but where it can get a little tricky is there are certain kinds of applications that must be decided within 45 days of when they're deemed complete. So you could see how having, say a 30-day submission deadline for all intents and purposes, the board's then starting to cut it really finely between when it's having its hearing and then what its deadline is for actually deciding the application. So it's not that it's impossible, but it becomes tricky and, can create, it's just something you have to be very careful with.
I think what you're saying is really useful. I think there's another piece to it too, where I think if we present a process where we can encourage the developer, it's not as good as requiring them, but I think if we can make the case, if you go to a neighborhood early on in the process before you've invested a lot of your time and a lot of your money and get some feedback and maybe even possibly get some buy-in to what you're trying to do, it can benefit the developer. It can make those relationships better with the neighborhood moving forward. And so I think that's part of what the advisory planning district concept was, is, even if you can't mandate it, you'd have a system in place where you would encourage developers to come and, do some brainstorming almost with the neighborhood at that initial phase. Because once they've submitted something to the planning department, they've invested the time, they've invested the money. So even if the neighborhood has that 30 days, it's their plans are already on paper, right? So I think the idea is to try to make it easy for them, make it attractive for them to come have that conversation, but before they've before they've set their mind in stone.
Well, I noticed that you have sometimes announced certain meetings in advance, like you're saying in September there'll be another meeting, and that does give people notice. So I'm wondering, you know, there's something read in the newspaper about the sale of a parcel of land and the developer has bought it. Is there any way that council can interface with the developer to find out early on what their plans are and then make suggestions to meet with the neighborhood immediately?
You know, it's too bad that our planner, Lee Solo, isn't here, because he does do that. You know, I think the planning board encourages that, and we try to do that as much as possible. But I don't know how. I mean, that's not to say that we couldn't try to figure out ways to make it even, a stronger process and encourage it even more.
Well, I think there's something to send back to the task force too, is looking at the calendar and looking if there can be improvements to that. And if there's things that we can do on the municipal side to keep neighborhoods informed and keep residents informed. So thank you.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry. But the Witherspoon-Jackson Street neighborhood already exists, and I think it's a pretty good model for that. There might be some modifications that could be made to that format, but you could have maybe just a couple of neighbors as experimental to begin with. That's one. And then maybe try another region that's under a lot of development. I don't know what that would be, Mercer Street or something like that, where there's a lot going on in that location, and use them as trial groups. Because when I'm at those meetings, it's pretty well run, and there's not a lot of controversy. I mean, most people seem to want the same things. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to, yeah. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? And can you tell us when the next, speaking of announcing things ahead of time?
So the public meeting is September 17th. I think it's a Wednesday, and it's in the community room at 7 p.m.
Okay, so I encourage everybody who's interested in this to put September 17th on the calendars.
And also feel free to email me or any member of the advisory planning. That's this room right here. That's called the community room.
Okay. Yeah, can you just hold on, because I know there's a lot of people waiting, I think, for the public hearing on the landscaping registration ordinance. So with council's approval, I'd like to just bump that up, and then we'll get to the rest of the agenda. So I'd like to open up actually, before I open up the public hearing, I want to pitch it to Councilwoman Heather Howard, who I know has been working on this ordinance, to give us a review of what's in there and why it's important.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank you. See, there are many people in the audience who are here tonight because it's a really interesting and really historic night that we're here, and perhaps the rain is appropriate, that it's very serious. This is a very serious issue we're considering. I just want to make a few framing remarks because I think we're going to hear rather eloquently from people who've been working hard on this ordinance and people who would be affected and are here to talk about what this ordinance would mean for them. This is really another step in what has been a multi-pronged effort to address the pernicious practice of wage theft. This ordinance before us today would require landscapers who register with the town to be notified of state and federal wage theft laws and also workers' compensation requirements. What that will do is it will address the knowledge gap. No one can claim they don't know about these laws. And it will really prevent cases of wage theft. This is really about prevention. And also, when we added the workers' compensation piece, we knew that was really important because a lack of workers' compensation hurts workers themselves, but also hurts residents who may be employing a contractor and who may then be subject to lawsuits because of inadequate coverage. Now, this issue before us today is important to all workers in town, we think, but particularly to low-wage workers. And it reflects what has been really almost an 18-month process where our Human Services Commission has been working with a lot of interested parties to focus on what more can we do in terms of stepping up enforcement, expanding education. And I want to call out some really important partners in the audience. I see Maria Huega from LALDEF is here and has been a really important partner. Craig Garcia from New Labor is here. It's been terrific. And none of this would have happened without our citizen volunteers on the Human Services Commission, especially John Heilner, who chairs the Immigration Subcommittee, Ross Wishnick, who chairs the Human Services Commission, and then Elisa Nera, who is our Human Services Director and who has been living and breathing this, I think, since she started the job just over a year ago. Now, we started with the landscaping ordinance, but we're going to be looking for other opportunities, and I'm so glad Jeff Grosser is here, our health officer, because he knows we're coming next for some of the ordinances under his jurisdiction, looking at the restaurant, and we also want to look at the construction sectors. So I'm really pleased that we've got this collaboration between all of these community leaders. And really today is about making sure we're stopping this pernicious practice, but addressing something that we hope happens very rarely. If we do our job and talk about this enough, we're going to prevent it. And it's a reminder that most of the employers in our town do the right thing. But when some don't, it hurts everyone. It raises the cost of doing business for everyone. It leads to inhumane treatment of employees and really robs people of the wages they've earned. And so this is really an important, we think, step in making Princeton a more humane community. And we're really excited to take this up. And I'm excited to hear from folks in town who are going to talk about what this would mean. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And with that, yes, Ms. Cromwell.
I just wondered if council could ask questions.
Yes, go ahead.
I just had and thank you so much. I'm really proud also to be part of this. Has the Human Services Commission thought about how to protect domestic workers inside homes? It seems impossible, but I don't know if you've touched on that.
We have not as a commission. It's a great question, and so maybe I'll give them a little bit of warning. When Craig comes up, maybe Craig from New Labor can talk about whether or not, from your work in New Brunswick and elsewhere in the state, if you've addressed that. It's a great issue, Jenny. I mean, we're learning more and more about wage theft in the different industries in which it happens, and absolutely that is one area where there's not only probably wages may be withheld, but also taxes and other issues that we know are important. So it's a great question, and Human Services, we've done a number of trainings and want to continue working. Oh, and I'm so sorry, I can't see you, Nick, you're hiding over there. Also, we've had a really important partner in Chief Sutter and the police department, including the trainings you did earlier this year for your force, and you involved Craig and have been amazing. So I was looking at who I was seeing and I didn't see you. So I don't have a full answer there, Jenny, but I promise we'll look at it, and maybe when Craig comes up, he can address that.
Great, thank you. And now I'd like to open up the public hearing. So if anybody would like to speak to this ordinance, please come to the mic and state your name.
Ross Wishnick, Edgerstone Road, Chair of the Princeton Human Services Commission.
And because of the rain, you just need to speak right in that mic and
Okay.
make sure you hear yourself loudly, or we
I'm
can't.
probably going to repeat some of what Heather said, but she's always ahead of me. So wage theft pertains to financially vulnerable, low-wage and immigrant workers. More often than we might expect, they are not allowed meal breaks, overtime pay, or even paid minimum wage, and sometimes forced to work off the clock without pay, not clocking in until a little later, clocking in a little earlier, and are frequently mischaracterized as independent contractors. Wage theft is not concentrated in any one industry. On the contrary, it is found in agriculture, poultry processing, janitorial services, landscaping, restaurant work, garment manufacturing, long-term care, home health care, and retail, and pretty much everywhere that exists. And it affects large numbers of people nationwide. Just for a little perspective, according to the analysis by the Economic Policy Institute in Washington, gas station and convenience store robberies equaled about $140 million in 2012. Now, if you compare this to the Department of Labor's estimates in the same period of $280 million in illegally withheld back wages which were recovered, and that represents not even 1% of the amount that is stolen. So as we might expect, this is only a small fraction of lost wages. In the 2009, what's called the Broken Laws study, it's estimated that about $40 to $60 billion of wages are illegally withheld from all low-wage earners. Whatever that actual number is, because it's clearly difficult to determine, this is a bad problem. And the best solution requires new congressional legislation in Washington. But as we all know, the norm in Washington is partisan politics before all else. Therefore, the likelihood of those people to break ranks to pass this legislation is very low. Therefore, the fastest, though tedious, path to confronting this insidious crime is through local action like we're talking about here. One town at a time, one municipality at a time. New Brunswick preceded us. They passed this wage theft law, I think, sometime in December. We're next. We'll be the second municipality to pass this kind of wage theft ordinance. And though it pertains, as Heather said, to landscapers now, I think we all, hope that this only represents the first of many steps in Princeton that will lessen wage theft wherever it might occur. It's an important statement that you and we will be making today, and we hope by showing leadership in this area that other towns in the state will follow. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question about the proposed ordinance. Hi, Linda Auerbach, Lytle Street. My question is Section 10C-5, exemption of home improvement contractors and additional exemptions. I don't know what they are. Now, Charo Huega is here. Over the years, she has been very helpful. I've sort of been in touch with hundreds of people, some of whom resolved these issues on their own, because I translate for my neighborhood free of charge since 1985. Now, Maria was very helpful in some instances. She's got some clout. She had some lawyers. But there are private homeowners who are employing gentlemen from Central America mostly, who have some experience in carpentry, in masonry, etc. Now, when the town issues permits for those homeowners to do home improvements, there needs to be some oversight of whether the people that they are hiring on their own, maybe not even through a subcontractor or a contractor, that those people also are going to be protected. I mean, I won't name the name of the gentleman, but a resident of Mercer Road, a quite wealthy man, booked 8 men years ago out of quite a bit of money, and I contacted Maria about that. I mean, they basically rebuilt his basement, a private homeowner. Now, this appears to exempt private homeowners, home improvement contractors. I don't think it should. Maybe there's a different law that would apply, and I don't know how someone who was a victim...
Okay, we're going to get an answer to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, for raising that. Exactly. This ordinance is specifically geared towards landscapers, and so home improvement contractors are not covered. But we do want to look at reaching them when we consider that kind of an ordinance. Just as I mentioned, we want to think when we think about restaurant inspections as well.
Right, just to clarify, the home improvement contractors sometimes do a little bit of landscaping when they're doing, when they're doing an addition or something, and so that's why, but they didn't have to register as landscapers.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I think Heather and Ross did a great job already telling you the importance of this ordinance and how it would be a great tool for Human Services and the police department to go after landscapers who are not paying their workers. And so really, I just wanted to, some of the workers have come here today to share a few words, and I just wanted to invite them up here. Go ahead.
I do want we're going to hear from folks in the community, but you have a really good news story just from within the last week of how you've worked with the police department to resolve a case, because I think it was Councilwoman Butler who asked, whether we had a sense of the number of complaints, and going forward, that's something we're going to want to track. Yes. But if you could just tell us a little bit about your partnership with the police and how you handled this case, I think that would actually be helpful to folks to hear.
Yes, actually about 2 weeks ago, I had a gentleman come into my office. He was owed about $1,400 from a landscaping business. He had worked there since April, and it seems as they had some sort of agreement that he would be paid every 2 weeks, a certain amount of dollars an hour, but it looks like the manager was just paying him whenever and whatever he felt. And so he came to my office, we did an intake, I called the dispatch, and an officer came, and we were able to call the landscaping business and made an agreement, and he agreed to pay the full amount by the weekend. And when I came on Monday, I followed up with both the worker and the business owner, and it had been paid. And really what we say to them is, please pay them what you owe them, and if you don't, we may have to actually do a state complaint through the Department of Labor. And so to avoid problems, they just go ahead and pay for whatever it is that they owe the worker. So it was actually very easy. It was just took a phone call. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Craig, if you want to come up. And we're going to be doing the interpreting piece because they speak Spanish.
Oh, and I was just going to say, I think we all know who you are, but for anybody out there who doesn't know, this is Luis Siniara, who's the director of our Human Services Department.
Craig Garcia, 52 Birch, also from an organization called New Labor in New Brunswick. First of all, I just wanted to thank you all for your leadership on this. Heather Howard, this has been a wonderful experience working with you on this, Mayor Lampert, especially the Human Services Commission, Lisa, John, Ross especially. I think this is a wonderful step forward. Although it was great that Lisa was able to resolve that case for $1,400, unfortunately in many, many instances, and particularly I'd say among day laborers, we are unable to recover wages even though it's clearly owed. And this ordinance will allow us to ensure that an employer can't work in this town unless they pay their workers the money that they're owed. To me, this is a common sense legislation. I think every town in the state should have a law like this. I certainly think that the state should have a stronger law like this, and I hope one day it will, but unfortunately we don't have that right now. So I truly thank Princeton for their leadership on this. I don't want to say too much because I want to make sure some members of the community are able to speak just a little bit about this and their experience. New Labor has been going out with the Human Services Commission and doing some health and safety trainings to make sure that Princeton's day labor is the best trained in the state. And so I'm really excited about this. I want to say some of that just in Spanish too, so everyone here knows. Bueno, yo quiero decir gracias al Consejo de Princeton para empujando y ayudando a nosotros en moviendo esa ley. Específicamente yo quiero decir gracias al conservador Howard, al alcalde Lampert, también a los servicios humanos, John, Elisa y Ross, por haciendo todo eso. Yo creo que esa ley sería algo importante. Sería mejor si tuvimos una ley así en todo el estado, pero realmente yo quiero decir gracias a ese pueblo para empujando esa ley. It's also going to be very important that we have enforcement on this, and I would very much like to thank Chief Sutter for allowing New Labor to come and train his police force. I think that's just such a huge step. I wish I could get that in our home office in New Brunswick, hopefully one day soon, but that was wonderful leadership, and I think the results are already showing on that, so I want to thank him too. Enforcement is not just from the police, and passing this law is not just the role of the council. It will also take participation and education for the community. So that's something that, LALDEF, New Labor, and Human Services will continue to work together to make sure that the community is educated on this law and will know how to use it. Domestic workers, I wanted to make a quick comment about that. Domestic workers are tricky. They don't, unfortunately, have many of the rights that other folks do. There's no license to be revoked. In Lakewood, where we have one of our offices, they did pass a resolution in support of a domestic workers' Bill of Rights. That's something I could discuss with the council in the future and prepare some notes and come back, and I'd be more than happy to talk about it. Unfortunately, domestic workers don't have the amount of rights that they should. That would need to be a state-level legislation to really do a lot of what we would need. But they are protected against wage theft, and unfortunately that does happen. So, again, educating the community is really important. And so I'm going to open up some space for others to speak. Thank you.
Mi nombre es Alio. Vivo en John Street, Princeton.
My name is Alio, and I live in John Street in Princeton.
Quiero agradecerles por el apoyo que nos brindan a cada uno de nosotros.
I would like to thank you for the support that you're giving to us.
A pesar de que estamos acá como indocumentados, pero también tenemos el apoyo de ustedes y les agradezco a todos.
Even though we're here undocumented, I really appreciate your support.
Le doy gracias a todos los representantes que forman parte de la organización.
I would like to thank all of the representatives that are taking part in this.
Y sobre todo, pues, la verdad, estoy agradecido por todas las cosas y espero que llevemos a cabo más adelante el servicio para poder trabajar y apoyarnos los unos a los otros como hermanos.
And I would like to see this continued support in the future so that we can continue to work together.
Sí, muchas gracias, les agradezco a todos y muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I thank you all.
Buenas noches a todos los que estamos aquí reunidos en esta noche.
Good evening, all.
Vengo presentándome como Ambrosio Monterroso. Vivo en Lawrenceville, pero mi esposa vive acá en la 216 de la Wetherspoon. Por X motivo de compañía, pues yo estoy allá, pero estamos unidos siempre de corazón.
¿Cómo se llama? Ambrosio?
Ambrosio
Monterroso. My name is Ambrosio Monterroso, and I live in Lawrenceville. However, my wife lives in 216 Witherspoon Street, and so he's back and forth between Lawrenceville and Princeton.
Vengo a apoyar a esta organización, ya que también yo tengo una compañía y muchos se preguntarán en qué me beneficia a mí esta ley, sino que soy de las personas de que no veo solo el bienestar propio, sino también de los demás.
I'm here I actually own a landscaping business in Princeton, and some of you may ask why this benefits me. Go ahead. ¿Cómo le beneficia? I'm sorry.
Okay.
¿Cómo le beneficia esto?
Me beneficia a mí por el motivo de que también soy patrón y necesito también aprender de muchas cosas también de que acá en las organizaciones se dan a conocer para también yo conocer más a fondo de los cuidados de los trabajadores y como también propio y los demás.
I'm just going to summarize what he's saying. This will pretty much benefit him to know about the laws in the state regarding wage an hour. And so this educational piece that can be added into this ordinance will really help other landscaping businesses also know what these laws are.
Okay. Gracias.
Okay. Thank you.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Melchor Orozio.
Good evening, my name is Melchor Orozio.
Soy uno de los trabajadores aquí en el área de Princeton y estoy apoyando a la organización ya que se beneficia tanto ellos como yo mismo.
I work here in Princeton, and I want to. I'm here today to support the organizations that are doing the work regarding this ordinance, as this will benefit the low-wage workers as well as these organizations that are working in this ordinance.
Y bueno, me gustaría agradecerle a cada uno de ustedes, ya que nosotros como trabajadores necesitamos tanto el apoyo de ustedes para poder trabajar con más apertura, con más seguridad.
And I want to thank each one of you because really this ordinance can help us work in better conditions, feel safe, and feel that our rights are protected.
Ya que ha habido algunos casos, en mi caso a veces me han quedado tal vez a deber trabajadores que por alguna u otra razón no pagan, pero estoy seguro que ustedes nos van a apoyar en la ordenanza que van a hacer en esta tarde.
And I myself have been a victim of wage theft and have experienced businesses not paying what has been owed. And I really wish that I'm here to support this ordinance, and thank you, as this will be very helpful to us.
Muchísimas gracias por el apoyo y esperemos que en algún otro momento nos podamos seguir reuniendo y conociéndonos un poco más y hacer más grande la organización. Gracias.
Thank you for your support, and I wish that we continue to work together and hope to see you again in the future. Thank you.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Reinalda Cruz, yo vengo de New Brunswick. Yo soy staff en New Labor. ¿Cómo se llama? Reinalda Cruz.
My name is Reinalda Cruz, and I'm from New Brunswick, and I am a staff of New Labor.
Yo le quiero dar las gracias a todos ustedes por apoyarnos.
I want to thank you all for your support.
Ya que los trabajadores de landscaping,
since the landscaping workers
son humillados realmente y la ordenanza los beneficia mucho a ellos como trabajadores.
Are humiliated at times, and this ordinance can really offer them support.
Porque hay patrones que no les pagan después de haber trabajado 1 o 2 semanas, dicen, él no trabajó conmigo, no lo conozco.
Since there are employers out there that after workers have performed jobs for weeks, will say, I don't know them, I don't owe them anything.
Y la ordenanza es algo bueno para que los empleadores reconozcan realmente que sí tienen que pagar, porque un día de trabajo realmente es un día de pago, porque nosotros somos el support de nuestras familias realmente.
And this ordinance will really help those landscaping businesses know what the laws are and know that they do have to pay their workers and that it's important for them to get their wages as they have to support their families.
Y más que nada que ellos, que nosotros como trabajadores, que los empleadores conozcan que también nosotros tenemos derecho, así no estemos legalmente en este país, así seamos indocumentados, merecemos respeto.
And for them to also recognize that even though some of us might be here undocumented, we do have rights and we do deserve justice and respect.
Thank you for everything. Thanks.
I'm John Highlander from Library Place. I don't really know how I can follow up on the speeches we just heard.